Lead this hour from the carousel, the quarterback carousel. The winds of change are blowing in Indy. And if you have not heard, perhaps not, we learned that the Colts have decided to pull the plug on their forever quarterback, their number one drafted quarterback. He was first-round pick back in 2023, Anthony Richardson. And they are instead turning to veteran Joe Flacco. That's right, Joe Flacco. Flacco will be the starting quarterback this weekend. Now, the coaches for the Colts met on Tuesday morning, and ultimately they decided to make the change. They opted for the what's the word I'm looking for? The seasoned Flacco, he's not fat, the seasoned Flacco over the incompetent Richardson. Now, those plugged into the situation say Richardson pretty devastated by the demotion. And that is the meaty part of the story. That line right there, that Richardson is pretty devastated by the demotion. So let us discuss the question. Anthony Richardson, the devastation of it all by his Indy benching. Can you explain why? So I've got Browsing, Spice Rack, and Sumo. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to make the cough button, which I'm going to hit right now. All right, so number one. Anthony Richardson must think that he's living in some kind of a video game. The Colts quarterback must think he's living in some kind of video game if he is stunned and devastated by this move. In fact, I would argue, and I said this earlier on in the show, but I'm going to repeat it for those of you late to the room. The Colts did not bench Anthony Richardson. He benched himself. This is a loss of rank by the player, not the team. Because Richardson had been absolute crap all season, but yet they kept rolling him out there. Despite all the incomplete passes, they kept sending him out there. And the reason he got benched was because he said, I want to go to the bench. Richardson, not only a quarterback, he was terrible. And there's no other way to say it. No signs of improvement. And yet there are the quarterback apologists out there that say, oh, he got a raw deal. How exactly did he get a raw deal? The NFL is not a developmental league. It's not. They give you an opportunity. You have to show some signs of progress. If you don't, you're out. You're neck deep in quicksand. That's what Richardson was. It's one thing to be bad, right? It's one thing to be bad and learn on the job. It's another thing to go AWOL. And that's what happened here. Richardson asked to come out of Sunday's game against the Texans for, it was one play, but the optics on this are terrible. He then told the media, I was tired. Now, a lot of you boys are former military. Some of you are in the military right now, and you know if you serve time in the United States military, there's a term they have for someone that does what Richardson did. It's called a dereliction of duties. Richardson abandoned his post, and you say, well, that's only one play, but I'll bet you there's other guys on the Colts and every team in the NFL that are tired and would like to come out of the game, but they don't do it because you're not supposed to do it. It's a war of attrition. Now, internally, the Colts are telling all their buddies in the media, they're like, well, listen, Richardson, he's still got his time. He's still the quarterback of the future. His time is not over. One report that I read said the benching was I love this, a growth opportunity. A growth opportunity for Richardson. And they insisted that the Colts are not quitting on Anthony. So I ask you the question, I'll answer first. Are the Colts getting out of the Anthony Richardson business? So the answer, I'm nodding my head, yes. At the very least, what they're doing is browsing. They're doing some window shopping. They're surfing around the internet. They're looking for a deal, right? Seeing what's available. Richardson is no longer in the bubble of trust. Not that he was actually in it ever, but he was at least part of the inner circle, and he's got nobody to blame but himself. Now, Joe Flacco is not the long-term answer, and people always freak out. Well, you don't have your forever quarterback. Well, you live in the moment, okay? The Colts are living in the moment, and I'm okay with it. Now, speaking of living in the moment, we head to Jersey, page number 2, and that is where the Jets will take on the Texans. Another primetime game for the Jets. They continue to shove them down our throats. I mean, can somebody call an audible, please? My God. Anyway, the Jets are playing the Texans on Thursday night to kick off Week 9 in the NFL. The interim coach, who will have no chance of being the permanent coach, Jeff Ulbrich, he commented on his star defensive back who's got a big mouth and also apparently lacking some football talent lately, Sauce Gardner. So Jeff Ulbrich commented, the interim coach, about Sauce Gardner's tackling needs to get better. So question, how does that one hit you? That the coach, interim coach of the Jets, publicly put his name on Sauce Gardner and the poor tackling. So this is what's known as easy peasy, right? If you look at the spice rack, you ever had bad sauce? You know that it just doesn't hit you right. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, exactly. So you need to add maybe some onions. I like garlic. I add a little more garlic. Other herbs, whatever. Dress it up. That's what's going on. Sauce Gardner's got the name. His game is lacking, though. And they've been having these conversations. I always say with these stories, and I'm never wrong about these stories, when it gets public, when it bubbles up to the surface like this, when it's up at the surface, how long has this been going on internally? All right, they've been having these conversations behind closed doors for some time, and now Ulbrich is saying the quiet part out loud. It's not easy, right? You interim coach, you're not long for the Jets. That's a star player. But the facts are the facts, and the numbers back up that Sauce Gardner has been just a jabroni out there. He's just a guy. Gardner missing tackle rate this year, almost 25%, 23.3% missed tackle rate. That is the 7th worst among all defensive backs in the NFL. The 7th worst missed tackle rate. He's a matador. Ole, 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 ole. Yeah, that's what he is. He's a matador. Now, he's missed tackles more than twice as often as his previous career average prior to this year. So there is a problem. No one's going to cry an ocean for Sauce Gardner. He's got a big mouth and he's very popular on the social media and all that. He's not exactly living up to his star status. Now, final point. We pivot to pro bouncy ball and a very bizarre story that a listener in Boston sent me, and I said, you know what? This is right in my wheelhouse. God bless you. God bless. Thank you for this. So during an appearance on the home of the Ben Maller Show in the Commonwealth, 98.5, the Sports Hub, Joe Mazzulla, Coach Joe Mazzulla, he was asked a rather benign question. Joe Mazzulla was asked, what rule changes would you like to see in the NBA? And he answered the question. Now, he didn't say, hey, I'd like to see a 6th foul or I'd like to see 3 technicals. No. Joe Mazzulla asked what rule changes he would like to see in the NBA. He said, hey, why don't we add power plays and in-game fights to the NBA? Let me repeat that. Joe Mazzulla, coach of the reigning champions of the NBA, and I'm pretty sure he wasn't kidding here. Said he would like to see the NBA add power plays and in-game fights. Are you on board? How about Y plus E plus S? What does that? Yes. What does that spell? All right, this is the epitome of coloring outside the lines. Now, sure, as Mazzulla said, it's entertainment, it's show business. Now, it's pretty much his point. But, man, I want to have what he's having his own tea parties, what he's having. He's guzzling that ayahuasca tea from the Amazon is what he's doing here. And I recommend, now, if you're going to have in-game fighting, you got to keep it somewhat safe. So how about those inflatable sumo suits, and you pause the game for 5 good minutes, and right at midcourt, you put in a little ring. You have the cheer squad bring out a ring, and you have the sumo suits, and player A versus player B for 5 minutes, and they can bump bellies. They can just go head-to-head bumping bellies in those inflatable sumo suits. How about this idea? Power slap. Cross-promotion, NBA power slap. You set a table up, a card table, right over the midcourt logo, and you adjudicate the beefs by having each player sit there and slap each other right at midcourt. Yeah, that's what. Why not? Now, as far as the power plays, Joe Mazzulla said there should be power plays where on a technical foul, instead of a A technical being where you just get the ball out of bounds, and a foul shot, he said you play 5-on-4 for 5 seconds or 3 passes. So 5-on-4 for 5 seconds or 3 passes. He wasn't kidding, by the way. Joe Mazzulla, Sleepy Joe. Let him play Joe. Joe Mazzulla there, coach of the Celtics. And that's a great idea. Of course, I would argue that the NBA, being objective here, they already play 5-on-4 quite a bit because normally one of the 5 players on defense is sleeping. They're in zombie mode. And remember, the Celtics coach, Joe Mazzulla, he scoffs at all the talk about media pressure. We didn't make a big deal about this on the show back when he said it a couple weeks ago, but Joe Mazzulla talking about all the pressure of the Celtics to repeat and all that. He said, well, there's no pressure because we'll all be dead soon. That was his quote. Joe Mazzulla, he wants the NBA to add fighting and the power play. Power play. I remember a couple years ago they were legitimately talking about adding a 4-point line, that was something they were considering. And I haven't heard much about that recently. It just depends. If the ratings keep going down in the NBA, people aren't watching on television, they'll do something to spice it up. There'll be some kind of alteration to make it more interesting, to try to get people engaged to watch. They got that Fugazi in-season tournament bullcrap that should be starting here soon. That kind of stuff.